The East Baton Rouge Parish Library believes that a thriving business community is good for us all. That's why we help entrepreneurs start businesses with tools like Gale Business Builder. Keep commerce rolling by providing access to computers, printers, and free Wi-Fi at 14 branch locations. Get a library card. Grow your business at ebrpl.com/business.
Started making beer at home and immediately fell in love with it. After like the day of my first batch of brewing, I was already thinking, can I do this for a living?
Oh yeah, obsessed with it. He was totally consumed by it, and then looked at me one day and told me I was put on this earth to brew beer. And I was like, wow, that is such a bold statement. And if you can say that about anything, then you need to follow your dream and do it.
Good morning and welcome to Strictly Business. I'm your host, J.R. Ball. This webcast features conversations with Louisiana's most inspiring and influential CEOs and entrepreneurs, with the goal of providing insights, ideas, and inspiration to help you and your business grow. Now, we want to keep Strictly Business as interactive as possible, so for those joining us live, here's an icebreaker question. Submit your vote in the comments, and the results will be posted at the end of the webcast. Strictly Business is brought to you by the East Baton Rouge Parish Library and Home Bank. Without their support, this project would not be possible. This month, we're talking with Norisha Kirts Glover, the founder and owner of NRK Construction in Baton Rouge. We'll ask Norisha about the decision to leave a successful career in fundraising and business development to pursue her entrepreneurial dreams, the challenges and rewards of being a female business owner in a sector traditionally dominated by men, and we'll also talk about her experiences and get her advice on launching a company as well as doing business in a community like Baton Rouge. Norisha, welcome and thank you for being with us. I find it so interesting. You spent 12 years as a fundraiser supporting education reform and higher education institutions, and you have an undergraduate degree from LSU in communications and a master's in public administration. So against that background, take us through the process that led you to become an entrepreneur and launching your own construction business.
Yes. So when I think about the process, usually when I tell the story, it starts with I was fundraising for LSU. I'd been in fundraising at that point in time around 12 years. I'd been doing educational fundraising, and I enjoyed fundraising, but it got to a point where it was rinse and repeat. You ask someone for $50,000, they say, great, now ask them for 100. You get $100,000, they say, great, now ask them for 250. And all of that was fine, but I needed something much more challenging. And so I started sharing with friends in my network that I was interested in looking for a role, not with a particular title, not with a particular organization, but one that would allow me to manage people, projects, and budgets. And I was just sharing it with everyone that I knew. And a friend of mine said, have you ever considered construction? I said I had not. But that I'd research it, I'd look into it. And he says, if this is something that you decide to do, I will teach you everything that you need to know. And that's really how the journey into construction started. I would say that the spirit of entrepreneurism probably was always in me, and I just didn't realize it. One, my father owned his own business, a lawn business, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. So I've only known a family member who has owned his own business. I don't know that I had an appreciation or context for that when I was a child. When I was working in education, I actually started working for a charter school organization in DC, and then I worked for an education reform organization out of California, and all of those were startups. I don't know that during that time I thought about myself being an entrepreneur, but I had an opportunity to work with organizations that were starting up. And then when I fundraised from LSU, a lot of the individuals who I was asking money from were entrepreneurs, or I was fundraising to support some of the entrepreneur programs at LSU. So I think there are bits and pieces that were introduced in parts of my life, and now I have a greater appreciation for it going into construction.
One of the things about being an entrepreneur that I admire, and I mean, I don't necessarily have this gene, but it's that willingness to take risks. It's that willingness to sort of put everything sort of on the line to believe in something, or to, find, hey, there's a market out there and I'm going to risk everything to make it happen. So I'm wondering, has risk taking always been something in your comfort zone? I know it's in your DNA through your family, but if risk taking wasn't something that comes naturally, how do you evolve to embrace that?
I do think that risk taking has always been in me. And again, I don't know that I would have described myself as a risk taker growing up. But when I think about the fact that I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, then I moved out of state to DC. I worked for organizations that didn't have a long history, that somehow that was in me. It's just not something that I thought about at that time. I do believe that a person can cultivate it. And I do think that all people are willing to take risk. Is that some of us take much more calculated risk than others, and some of us take longer to come to that decision than others, and some of us need many more safety nets in place for us to take that risk than others. I definitely, when I thought about taking this risk, thought about how this would impact me financially, et cetera. But I also thought about the fact that at the time that I decided to take this leap into construction, I was not married. I did not have any children, right? Had that been 5 or 10 years later, I don't know that I would have taken the same leap, but where I was in my life at that point in time, I felt comfortable with my financial situation. I felt, since I didn't have a sense of obligation to other individuals, that made it comfortable for me.
Were there skills or attributes that you employed as a fundraiser that you continue to call upon or find helpful as a construction business owner?
Absolutely. So when I started my company, I was my only employee. So what that meant was that I was the project manager, I was the superintendent. Often I was the one running to get the materials and throwing it in the back of my car, or having somebody throw it in the back of my car. But the skill set, and that was the skill set that was very much needed then. As my companies continue to grow, I've gotten back to the skill set that is the true heart of me. So in fundraising, it's about relationship building, and that's no different than business development. And so I've grown my team to take on tasks that were on my plate so I could focus on what is my strength, which is developing relationships that will ultimately lead to the contracts that we're securing for our company. Now, I still use the project management skills, or I still use my skills from fundraising. So for example, when you ask individuals for money, you want to absolutely deliver on what it is that they've asked you to do with their money. So if I say, I want to ask you for $50,000 for a scholarship, then I need to make sure that that money is secured, that we identify who the recipients are. I want to make sure that that donor at that particular time got to meet who the recipients are. I need to carry that from the beginning all the way to the end. That's really no different than in construction. It's just a different type of project management. Even identifying the individuals who might want to donate money is no different than identifying the businesses or the clients who have the capital and have a project that they want completed. And so I absolutely use those skills. They look slightly different, but I will say that when I was trying to figure out what my next step was, that I wanted to do something different, what I did tell my friends is that I'm interested in using these skills. This is what I'm good at. And it just so happened that a friend said, you can use all those skills in construction, and this is why I think you should look at it.
Well, when you made the change, it was a big one even from the standpoint of you chose an industry that's historically been dominated by men. So can you talk about the challenges you faced and perhaps still face as a woman in the construction sector, and how do you overcome those?
Yes. So when I think about the challenges that I face in the sector, I know that there are ones that are gender-based. I think that those are not the ones that I notice immediately. So when I started taking on projects, when I look back on it, all my clients were female, and those are the ones who are willing to say yes to me. And I'm sure that there were some individuals, in fact, I remember someone wanting to say yes to me and then calling me and saying, hey, my father and my husband don't want to move forward with you as a contractor because you're a woman. I haven't heard that a lot. But I think it's because those people just went with someone else and didn't tell me that was the reason why they did not choose to move forward with me. If I had to think about other challenges that I faced then and still face now, and I think it's probably more applicable to being a minority, I would say it's the financial aspect of it, right? So having financial access to capital that maybe other individuals historically who've had access to it that others have not, right? So when I started the company, I needed a line of credit. When I started the company, it was in 2015, but my first project started in 2016 with the flood. I took on 5 homes. So you're needing to front load the money for these clients. I got $15,000 from a bank, which was absolutely helpful, but I needed much more than that. And at that point in time, you think that, okay, I've worked really hard. I have a strong reputation. I've kept a great credit score, like I've been told my whole life that I need to do, not realizing that having a great credit score isn't enough, that now they want to collateralize your home and it's all I have, like as a single woman. So trying to figure out how to navigate those financial barriers as a business was really challenging. That really applied more to my residential projects. It certainly applies to commercial projects as well. Commercial projects, I really had to learn through the process that there were projects that would go out for bid, but they'd already kind of determined who the contractor was ahead of time, because those are conversations that I had not been a part of, that I just didn't know that that was how the industry worked. Also being able to identify good subcontractors. So as a general contractor, I absolutely manage a project, but managing a project requires me to identify all the subcontractors who are going to perform the work. So finding ones who wanted to be loyal to NRK Construction, who's a new company in the market, doesn't have a history here, particularly during the flood when people are inundated and they're having a mistrust of a lot of contractors. It was difficult finding those subcontractors. It took years to find those. And even then, I'm still trying to identify who are the right subcontractors for where we are in the business.
Yeah, you had mentioned really the business really kicked off in 2016 with the unfortunate incident of the flooding that occurred in August. How did that niche? I mean, how did you decide, you know what, I have this opportunity, I'm going to start off in this residential remodel, repair, rebuild phase of the industry?
So because of the flood, what I had was an opportunity over and over again, because I'm learning trial by fire at this point, was to renovate different people's homes really from studs. And so that gave me the experience that I needed to start building a reputation in the community. And then eventually, as that flood work began to decline, I began to move much more aggressively into the commercial space.
So from there, was it always the plan that you were going to sort of expand into the multifamily commercial space, or is that something that kind of happened naturally?
It happened naturally because what I learned from my experience with the first commercial project and then working with residential clients is that commercial was much more definitive, right? Commercial, we have a set of plans, we have a set of specs that we are working with, whereas with our residential clients, they're like, I don't know what I want my paint color to be. What do you think? I don't know how I want this redesigned, or can you just tell me what this pricing is? And I'm like, I need drawings and additional details to be able to give you the most accurate pricing. So I liked commercial because of the structural part of me. The residential liked residential because of just what is the nature of my personality. How I decided to move in the multifamily housing space is I was presented with the opportunity to participate in a project that was new construction. And as I learned more about multifamily housing, what I learned is there are not a lot of players in the field. And when I hear that, that means, oh, well, then there's an opportunity for me to dominate. Am I dominating yet? No, but I'm learning everything that I can about the multifamily space. And I think that's indicative of my personality. It's just like, where is their opportunity? If we say that no one has created space, or, people are still trying to figure this out, I'm going to try to jump in and be there. I also have found over time that if there is an opportunity, and construction is that, where women have not historically, that's not been their pathway, or where minorities have been underrepresented, I feel the need to jump in and just figure out how to navigate those waters and figure out how I can make a space for women or minority-owned businesses, or even if it's not business, just women and minorities in a particular space that we traditionally have not been.
Well, and one of the things on that thread that I find interesting is that for business reasons, you've generally avoided many of the available minority-owned or disadvantaged business enterprise programs. Can you share what's gone into that decision? And I know you're not opposed to those programs, but for what your vision was, most of the time, they just weren't in your company's best interest, I think.
Oh, so this is my soapbox, JR.
Go for it.
So the challenge, when I first started my business, I got certified. So first of all, the certification process, people say it like, oh, get certified. You should know that every entity has their own certification. So I got certified at the state level, at the city level, for the city of New Orleans, for the city of Baton Rouge. I got certified for East Baton Rouge Parish Schools. Like, there are a lot of certifications. And the way that people love to market this is, oh, there's a lot of opportunities for minority and woman-owned businesses. Well, one, what I did not know in construction is that while those opportunities are marketed out there, clients, the public entities, and even the prime or general contractors at that level don't hold anybody accountable to adhering to it. So they may say, yes, we want women and minorities to participate in it. We have a 20% goal. And what I later realized is that is exactly what it is. It is a goal. If they don't hit it, they don't care. They're like, oh, we tried. So there was not really a genuine effort to have minority and woman-owned participation. If a company did have that genuine interest in having that participation, they might secure you as a contractor. But as a subcontractor, if you're making $5,000 profit off this or $20,000 profit, while that might be fine for the moment, that's not something that is going to really grow your company long term. And then also when you're performing as a subcontractor, you're at all the risk is passed down to you from the general contractor. And so I made the decision, I was no longer going to do subcontracting. I instead was going to focus on being a general contractor. I was going to manage the projects and I was going to be in control of my own destiny, because what I have never liked, and this kind of started my transition from LSU as well, is I've never liked a structure that has been created and said, okay, so then this is what your destiny is going to be. I'm going to be in control of that. So while I remain certified in those programs, I've never really secured projects that way, because a lot of it's just talk. The only program where I feel like I've been very successful in securing projects as a minority and woman-owned business is with the East Baton Rouge Parish Fair Share program. And I felt like that is because they have been very intentional in how they dictate or prescribe projects to be, to provide opportunity for minority-owned participation in the projects that they have. Now, the other thing that I will say is I'm also very careful. I don't want people to say, we want to work with her because she is a woman-owned company or a minority-owned company. I want you to work with NRK Construction because we do great work. You know that you will get that every single time. And it just so happens that we are also woman and minority-owned.
Well, as a part of that growth, doing business in Baton Rouge, many people, particularly those who are not from here, will say that Baton Rouge is sort of a who you know town when you're trying to do business. One, do you agree with that? And two, sort of how did you sort of break in to get within the structure where you could start to get with some of the more powerful and influential within the community?
I do think that it is a who you know. I don't think it's exclusive to Baton Rouge. I think that's how many cities, towns, states operate. My friends call me a connector, and I'm not one of those people who connect with individuals for my own personal benefit. I just really like understanding everyone's story. I think the fact that I went to LSU, and so I have a network from when I was an undergraduate and master student there, from my time working at LSU, and just the network that I had to build there, from being involved in junior league and other boards in the community. I've just developed a strong network that I am utilizing to my benefit, just like other individuals would do for their own companies. I think that's necessary for any business to thrive. while I certainly benefit from it, I recognize that still even my network is limited. I didn't grow up in Baton Rouge, so I don't get to say like, oh, I went to St. Joseph's or Catholic High. Like I recognize like I'm not in those particular networks. I have a limited network of my own that I try to utilize for the benefit of myself, and recognizing that there are some circles I will never be in, but I'll try to break through.
So what tips would you offer to young professionals or entrepreneurs looking to get established or connected in the business community?
So I think that if they're trying to get established in the business community, I think part of it's about establishing yourself in your profession, because I think that's where it starts, right? So there's establishment that I have in the fundraising community that's never left me. And in fact, I still get to benefit from it in my construction work. So first, establishing yourself in your profession. Another way of establishing yourself is by becoming involved in the community through volunteer work. That volunteer work can be work that you're doing, literally with your hands, or helping out an event. That volunteer work can also be that you are serving on a board so that you're enhancing what that network looks like. And then just participating in events and getting to know as many people as possible. I enjoy doing that. I don't intentionally go to an event, say, I'm going to look for J.R. Ball and talk to him, because I'm going to make sure that I get a contract from him one day. I'm going to go to an event just because I want to meet new people. I happen to meet JR. I do a good job of staying in contact. I know how to do that as a fundraiser. And then maybe it develops into something in the future. Maybe I help JR with something and he's able to help me, you're able to help me with something else in the future. But it's not something that I am always, it's not calculating. It's just it's a part of the nature of like who I am. But I would encourage people that if Baton Rouge is a place where you want to live, you want it to be a thriving city, you have to figure out how to be a part of it. And you're going to do that through being connected.
So it's now been 8 years since you launched NRK Construction. What's been the most rewarding thing about working for yourself? And what do you find to have been the most challenging?
I would say at first, rewarding would have been really when I started working and I was renovating individuals' homes. I didn't know what in the hell I was doing, JR, but I was the first one. I had 5 clients that I took on. I was the first one to get my clients into their homes, and they were pleased. And I was proud of that. Because my integrity and my word is everything. And I was absolutely committed to doing that for my clients. I think what is rewarding now is 2 things. It's taking on projects that I never would have imagined for myself. I don't know that I didn't have a long-term vision for myself when I started this construction company. I knew I wanted to do construction. I don't know what that ultimately looks like. And I think I'm still figuring that out. So every time I take on a project that isn't something that I've done before, I find that incredibly rewarding, and building our team and building these projects incredibly rewarding. I also find rewarding that I get to be present in my children's life in the way that I want to be, because I own my business and I'm not beholden to someone else's clocking in and clocking out. That is not a reason to become an entrepreneur, but I do find it rewarding that that I have that flexibility.
So what do you see as the intermediate and long-term goals, both for yourself and NRK?
So one, I want NRK Construction to be a destination business of choice. Like I want students when they're graduating from college going, NRK Construction is a company that I want to work for. There are a lot of people who know the company. We still have a ways to go. What I'm trying to create is generational. And I don't necessarily mean generational in that I assume that my children will inherit the business. I don't know that. They're 4 years old and about to turn 1 year old, right? But I want it to be a business that lasts generations. Right now, we are continuing to get our experience with in different industries, but long term, I'd want us to be one that specializes in education and healthcare. Right now, we do a majority of our work in the commercial space. I want government contracts to be a component of that. And I want this to be a business in the community that people want to work and then also feel like this company gives back to the community in whatever ways the community needs to continue to grow or push or move forward. At that time, I want NRK Construction to be a company that contributes to that growth and success.
So What advice would you offer to someone out there who's thinking about leaving a job where they work, or just anyone who is considering to become an entrepreneur? What are the key factors you suggest somebody weigh when deciding whether they're going to sort of jump into that entrepreneurial pool?
Well, one of the things I've been saying a lot lately is considering the season that they're in, right? And so there are some seasons that are better than others, depending upon who they are, right? So you may, if you're the breadwinner for your family, you might have some particular financial obligation that your current job provides the stability. That means that you may need to continue that for a little while longer before jumping into it. I am a risk taker, but I am very calculated and thoughtful and do a lot of research before taking my risk. I think it is very easy for people to glamorize being an entrepreneur and saying like, oh, I get to make my own work schedule. Great. You do get to work your own work schedule. And what you will find is that because you're a business owner, your own work schedule will mean that you're working practically 24 hours a day. And with a lot of people having a focus and trying to be intentional on work-life balance, I think that is something that they will want to think about, because for the short term, there won't be a work-life balance. I think people should very much think about the financial risk. So while I did have some savings when I started the business, I don't know that I fully understood that I really understood the capital that was required to successfully run a business. And I know for some people, that will be a very stressful factor. A lot of people think about, I'm really good at this particular skill set, so I'm going to do really great at it. And they think less about, how do I make sure that I have the cash flow to sustain me in this particular skill that I'm really good at? And so thinking through that will be something that is really important. I think beginning to identify the network of people who could be a resource for you and will be important, because as an entrepreneur, there will be a lot of things that you won't want to share with your employees. And so you will need other individuals who you can lean upon, whether that's somebody who's going to help you with your IT, whether that's someone else who's in the industry who can serve as a mentor for you. You will want to make sure that you have an accountant and an attorney who is giving you great advice. Like, make sure that you have that network out there, because there are just going to be a lot of questions that you just did not think about or know to think about that will arise, and you can't be in your head about it all the time. You'll get stuck.
So what does having it all look like to you?
I think that we can have it all, but it doesn't mean we have it all at the same time, right? So having it all for me is about having a business that I can grow, that I feel like positively contributes to the community and also leaves a legacy. But also having it all for me means having my family, so my husband and my children. And I want both of those things to be working great at all times. That's not possible. Some days I give more energy to the job. Some days I give more energy to the family. There are seasons where there's tons of time dedicated to the company and seasons where there's a lot of energy spent on the family. You can have it all, just maybe not always at the same time.
Norisha, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights and expertise. And thanks also to our viewers for making the time to join us today, as well as our sponsors, the East Baton Rouge Parish Library and Home Bank. Please join us August 16th for the next edition of Strictly Business. Until then, enjoy and make your day a great one.